Well, well, well. My review of The Stand by Stephen King just coincidentally has fallen upon the second day of widespread panic over the coronavirus. If you've been following my videos, you know I've been doing these reviews in publication order. The publication order for The Stand just happened to fall on this day. So, all things considered, let me introduce myself. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, published by Simon & Schuster Saga Press. This is my video review channel where, for the moment, I am reviewing every Stephen King novel in publication order. We are to The Stand right now. So, let's talk about current events that are happening with the coronavirus. This is being filmed, for those of you who might be watching this in the future, in the long future, this is being filmed 2 days, well, literally the day after the big coronavirus panic spread, where Rudy Gobert of the Utah Jazz was found to have the coronavirus, and the NBA canceled its entire season, and now everybody is just stripping the grocery stores bare of all the food. It is literally like a scene from The Stand, and that is the book that I am reviewing today. So, one of the things I wanted to say about this, well, let's just talk about current events for about 2 minutes here to begin with. I had been invited to the Emerald City Comic-Con as one of the author guests this year. Well, Emerald City Comic-Con was canceled due to the coronavirus. However, I still had a plane ticket to Seattle that I was going to use to visit friends and family in the upper Seattle area in Vancouver, Canada. And literally, this was the day before yesterday. I was 2 hours from getting on the plane. Something just didn't feel right. And as I was packing my bag for the plane, I was still going to make the trip. I heard the news that the Utah Jazz players had been diagnosed with the coronavirus, and I just thought, I'm not feeling right about this trip. I decided not to go. One of the reasons I decided not to go, one of the big reasons I decided not to go, was because, for those of you that have been following this blog, I work at the Utah State Prison. Now, I wasn't concerned about myself necessarily getting sick, but I was concerned about bringing a virus back to the inmates at the prison, because they're very concerned. We have a very vulnerable population of incarcerated individuals, and I just did not want to be the Rudy Gobert of the Utah State Prison and bring a virus into the prison that just contaminated everyone. So I canceled my trip to Seattle. It gave me a couple of free extra days to finish up this book, and let me just say, I'll start out with saying this has been my favorite book of all time. It's my favorite book of all time. And I've had a couple of fortunate things happen to me in conjunction with this book. With talking about the prison, well, one of the things is the first miniseries of The Stand was partially filmed at the Utah State Prison where I work. And I've watched pieces of that miniseries and have seen the places they filmed, and I recognize those places. Rumor is that when that was being filmed in Utah, Stephen King visited the Utah State Prison. And now at the prison, we've got this very long corridor that goes through the entire prison. It is a long corridor. And back in the day Stephen King visited, it was painted lime green. It was painted just the weirdest green color you can imagine. And it was just this long corridor. And rumor is, I don't know if it's true or not, but Stephen King sat in that corridor and looked down one way and down the other way and just noticed this weird green hallway. And that's kind of the inspiration he had for the Green Mile. That's the rumor floating around the prison. I do not know if it's true. Somebody ask Stephen King to verify, confirm, or deny. I don't have access to Stephen King, so I won't. But that being said, I also have another connection to The Stand. The miniseries was filmed in Utah. At the time, I was a college student, and I was a carpet cleaner, and the carpet cleaning company that I worked for had the account with the movie studio that every building or house that they used in Utah to film any scene in that movie, I actually cleaned the carpets after the movie studio had gone. This is typical in the movie industry. If you use someone's house or business for your movie, You clean up afterwards. Well, I cleaned up after everything that they did in The Stand. That is just an aside, a little personal thing. But I was reading The Stand. I did not ever read the first. Let's talk about the book now. Let's just get to the book and stop talking about me. The Stand, my favorite book of all time. I love it. I love it. I've loved every minute of it. I read this for the first time whilst I was in college, while I was cleaning carpets for that company that was doing. I've read a lot of Stephen King books prior to this one, but I had not read this one. I read a lot in high school. This one I had not gotten to. But back when I was in college, the extended version came out, this big extended version, and I've got hardcover copies and a few other paperbacks here and there. The extended version, it's the version you want to read. You do not want to read the cut version that the editors made him cut at the publishing company. No, you don't want to read that. When Stephen King first published this book, back in the early 80s or late 70s, it was a big book like this, and the publisher said, no, we're not publishing a big book like that. You need to cut like 100,000 words out of it. And so Stephen King cut 100,000 words out of it. Well, let me tell you, his editors were out of their skull. They were, why would you make Stephen King cut the best book in the world? Well, thank goodness they let him do his sort of author version and put all the deleted scenes back in, because it was a fantastic book, and it did not deserve to be cut. By the way, I'm a novelist. I work with Simon & Schuster, and I got to say, my editors are fantastic. They've never really intruded on my writing at all. They've never made me cut big things like that. I just don't understand why they would have made Stephen King cut this wonderful book down. Just a really dumb decision, in my opinion, because it's the greatest book in the world, and these people butchered it, and luckily Stephen King got to redo it the way it was supposed to be done, and now we've got this as a legacy. It's one of the greatest books. It's one of the iconic books ever written in the history of writing. That's just all it is. So you can tell I'm going to give this a good rating at the end, but let's get to it. As you know, the books that I rate on this channel, I give, I'm reviewing them from Stephen King's books. I'm reviewing from publication or in publication order. I'm also reading them word for word alongside the audible.com version. Now, this was read by a fellow named Grover Gardner on audible.com. He does a good job. At first it was a little off-putting because his voice sounded like he was one of those old 1950s sort of newsreel narrators, and it was just like, man, this is way out of date. But then I started getting into it, and then I realized his style really fits the book. So good job on him. I really enjoyed that. When Stephen King has been interviewed about this book a lot, and one of the quotes that I'm going to pull from his interviews, one of the ones I really liked, is he said, I loved The Lord of the Rings when I was a kid, and I wanted to write my version of The Lord of the Rings. He said, The Stand was it. The Stand was my version of The Lord of the Rings. Stu Redman, the main character in the book, was my Frodo. Randall Flagg, the main bad guy in the book, was my Sauron. And Las Vegas was my Mordor. And if you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about. Great analogy. You know, he also went on to do The Dark Tower, which many people consider his actual Lord of the Rings. But he himself says The Stand is his Lord of the Rings. So let's just get down. I don't do spoilers. We're just going to do a basic review of the plot and some of the characters. And then I just will encourage you to read it. So the basic plot is this. The U.S. Army, they weaponize a strain of the flu in their laboratories somewhere in the United States. Secret laboratories. Well, things go wrong in the lab. All things go wrong in all labs, and the virus gets loose. And the virus gets loose in the lab. There's a big shutdown, a lockdown. Well, one of the employees happens to escape the lockdown, and he takes his family and he flees the biological lab out into the countryside just to get away, because he knows that the army's going to be chasing him. Well, that has horrific consequences, because he's got this flu. He's got this weaponized flu. And it just goes sideways and backwards, and everything goes to hell from there, because he infects one person, the next. Well, you know how a pandemic goes. We are in the middle of one with the coronavirus. It snowballs and snowballs. Well, this, unlike the coronavirus, which I think hopefully will resolve itself. This virus, this weaponized virus in The Stand, kills 99.9% of the human population. And chaos ensues with the people that are remaining. That's the basis of the plot. A fairly simple plot. And I think that people that are living in today's day and age, especially right now, 2 days into the coronavirus panic, will relate to this. Maybe you want to wait till the coronavirus has ran its course before you read this, but maybe not. Maybe you are morbid like me and you're going to read it right in the middle. But I think this is a great book because, not just because of the premise of the virus killing everybody and leaving the earth a wasteland, but the characters. This has got the greatest crew of characters in literature. You will not find better people to read about and worse people to read about. Let's talk about the good guys first. First of all, one of the main characters is Mother Abigail. If you've read Swan Song by Robert McGann, you know there's a little bit of a supernatural twist with some of the characters. Mother Abigail has a little bit of a supernatural bent to her character. She can kind of see into the future, or as you know, in a previous Stephen King novel that I reviewed, she has the shining or so much clairvoyance. She's just a fortune teller, let's say, and she's gathering everybody to Boulder, Colorado. All the good people are kind of marching across the United States from the various locations to Boulder, Colorado. They're kind of being called there by Mother Abigail. One of the characters, which I think is one of my favorites, is Frances Goldsmith. People call her Franny. She's a young pregnant girl. Her nemesis is her next-door neighbor, who also survives this plague, Harold Lauder, who I think is one of the greatest characters in this book. And he's just a creepy stalker type of guy, just socially awkward, just doesn't realize that Franny has no interest in him at all, but yet keeps pursuing, but in all the wrong ways. Just makes your skin crawl, just the subtle way. It's not subtle. There's subtle and there's not subtle. Stephen King plays it both ways with Harold Lauder. I loved it. Stu Redman, kind of our main character. He is one of the first people infected by Patient Zero. You know, the guy that escaped the Army lab. Stu Redman's one of the first guys that he runs into at a gas station, and Stu Redman survives. And the government is wondering why Stu Redman survives. They're experimenting on him a little bit. Anyway, he escapes his circumstances. He is also on a journey to Boulder, Colorado with the other people, along with Larry Underwood, the young rock star, the guy who's finally getting his big break in the rock business. His song, Hey Baby, well, what was it called? Baby, Can You Dig Your Man? Something like that. Is finally becoming a hit on the radio. It's playing everywhere. It's kind of like the theme song of the virus. Everybody hears the song and everybody recognizes the song. And it's kind of a clever thing. Or a rock star makes it through and he is not killed. There's Nick Andros. He's a mute. He's a young kid. Tom Cullen, he's kind of like Abigail. He's got a little bit of supernatural bent to him. Nadine Cross, she's not a good woman, but she's traveling with the good guys, but she's not a good woman at all. Oh, not at all. Glenn Bateman and Ralph Brentner, they're good guys. Those are kind of the people that are on the side of good, but then there's the side of evil, where the characters get real juicy. Randall Flagg, the main bad guy, our Sauron, our Dark Lord of this. He's like an antichrist. That he's called the Dark Man, the walking dude. He's just evil. He's kind of a shapeshifter, you know. There's all these legends about him. And not only is Randall Flagg the bad guy in this book, but he also shows up in Stephen King's other books as a bad guy. Most notably, the Dark Tower series. We get a lot of him there. But he is the bad guy in The Stand, and he is a bad guy. I loved whenever he showed up on scene. Sparks fly, people. Another guy I really loved. I loved all the bad guys. This has got the greatest cast of bad guys of any book you'll ever read. Terry Henreid is kind of a really incompetent criminal. He's kind of floating around with this other incompetent criminal named Poke, and they go around pokerizing everybody. Pokerizing just means they're shooting people at random for, they're just idiots, and they get caught, and they get wound up in Randall Flagg's sort of quest. Mother Abigail's getting everybody to Boulder, Colorado, while Randall Flagg's kind of taking everybody on a journey to Las Vegas or Mordor, where the last stand is going to take place, where between good and evil. The Trash Can Man. He's a pyromaniac. He's an inmate. He escapes from prison. He sets things on fire. He's great. Companies Randall Flagg, along with, another guy, the Kid. Speaking of the cuts that they made, the editors cut. The editors made Stephen King cut parts, and Stephen King cut all the scenes with the Kid. He's just known as the Kid. He's kind of a muscle car driving, cocky street thug, right? But he's so cool. And Stephen King shouldn't have cut him out of that first version. Well, the editor shouldn't have made him cut anything. But he cut out the Kid, one of the most talked about characters in this book. Once the extended version came out, people were like, the Kid's awesome. He's a bad guy, but we loved reading about him when he was on. The Kid, great. The Trash Can Man, the Rat Man. There's Julie Laurie and Jenny Engstrom, these kind of disturbed women that just kind of follow along this crew of bad guys. It's just great. It truly is a Lord of the Rings quest. It's the good guys and the bad guys all in a race to Las Vegas, to the stand where they're going to make their stand, good versus evil. And that's as spoilery as I'm going to get. Just go out and read this book. My rating, I rate books 1 to 10. This book, I'm telling you, a solid 10 out of 10. My favorite novel of all time. Nothing's compared to it at all. Nothing. Please, everybody read The Stand. It's my favorite book of all time. You'll love it. Now, at the end of every video, as you know, every book I write, I dedicate to Stephen King, Motley Crue, and the Oakland Raiders. The reason I do that is because those were the 3 most important things to me when I was a kid growing up. And so every one of my books, I give them a shout out. Every book I've ever written they get a shout out for just being so important to me. So anyway, The Stand. Everybody go read The Stand by Stephen King. It is a fantastic book. I cannot recommend it enough. My favorite book of all time, 10 out of 10.